Welcome to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. My name is Kaylee.
And my name is Desi.
Today we'll be covering the death of Jessica Chambers. Here's a brief summary.
Jessica Chambers was a beautiful young 19-year-old cheerleader. She grew up in a small town. Her parents are Ben and Lisa Chambers. Jessica had many siblings and she was born in Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Jessica had a rough childhood. Her father was sent to prison when she was a child. Her brother was killed in a car accident. Despite this, she still had amazing grades and she was very popular.
On December 2nd, 2014, Chambers went to the emergency room with Quentin Telus. The next day, Quentin asked Jessica for sex. She did not want him, but he kept on persisting.
December 5th, Jessica asked Quentin $6 for food. Quentin asked for sex in return. A surveillance video at a gas station shows Quentin walking across the street to her car.
At 7:42, Quentin sent a text to Chambers. He says, "Honey, I'm sorry I can't be there tonight." He also adds to the message that his girlfriend from Louisiana has came up to see him. Authorities believe he wrote this to throw the police off.
8:09, a 911 caller reports that a car is on fire. When Jessica was found burning alive, the first responders asked her who did this to her. They said it sounded like she said Derek. Jessica passed away the next day.
Despite what happened to Jessica, no Derricks have been found guilty. However, Quentin has been tried twice for her murder, which resulted in a hung jury. July 2015, Quentin was convicted for the second-degree murder for the death of a Taiwanese woman that lived in Louisiana.
Here are some questions.
Did Jessica actually say the name Derek when first responders asked? If so, why hasn't a Derek been found guilty? She could have said Derek, Eric, she could have said Rick, not for sure as her speech was impaired, especially with her being burned and the paramedics and firefighters couldn't hear exactly what she said. If she did say Derek, and the reason why a Derek hasn't been found guilty is either she wasn't known to have been in contact with a Derek through text or anything like that. She could have known him in person and nobody knew about it. Or this Derek has covered their tracks very well. Or she didn't know a Derek at all.
Yeah, it is very unlikely that Jessica actually said Derek. Whenever you're burned alive, the lack of oxygen makes it a lot harder to speak clearly. She could have also said Eric or Rec as well. And also, they did one time think that it was this one Derek that lived close to her, but they end up finding out that his phone pinged at his house while this was going on, so he was not found guilty at all. Unfortunately, with a case like this, the reason why it was a hung jury was because the fact that the first responders kept thinking that she was saying Derek, so this whole time authorities are trying to find a Derek, and there might not even be a Derek involved. If there is one, then they must have done a really great job of covering their tracks, but it's highly unlikely. Quentin was known to have gasoline back at home in a shed. Did Quentin set her car on fire? It is very likely that Quentin did set her car on fire. It is interesting that he had gasoline in a shed. There's other reasons why he did have gasoline in his shed. Doesn't necessarily mean he's guilty, but I personally do believe that Quentin is guilty, and I think maybe he set her car on fire because he always wanted to have sex with her, and there were times where Jessica said no, and I think he got frustrated and mad because she was not giving him what he wanted.
Yeah, anybody can have gasoline in their shed. Maybe for purposes of filling up a lawnmower or just in case your car runs out of gas. But it is, like you said, definitely a little suspicious that he had gasoline in his shed. And he does have what looks like could be possibly a motive to set her car on fire. Why did Quentin kill Jessica if he did? Like you said before, Kaylee, there was many times that he was asking her for sex and she was turning him down. So it could have thrown him into a rage one night or could have upset him to the point where he had a psychotic break and maybe set her car on fire, which resulted in her death, unfortunately. Or he could have had other motives as well. With the facts of that Jessica was known to sell drugs sometimes. Maybe Jessica refused to sell drugs to him, or she stopped selling drugs altogether at one point, and that could have possibly pissed off Quentin.
Yeah, I think you mentioning that she did sell drugs is very important to note because there's a lot of times when drug deals have gone wrong before. That could have been a reason. Also, they could have just had a general argument. And later on, Quentin was later on convicted to killing a Taiwanese woman that he was known to also ask sex for a year later. So it is kind of odd that she was burnt alive and he still wasn't convicted. Yet years later, they end up finding a connection to him killing this Taiwanese woman. So he could also be a psychopath very well. But I think definitely the sex and drugs are the main factors involved in why he kills her. Some guys are really sick out there and they do not want to take no for an answer. And unfortunately, the result of this end up being Jessica's death. Did Quentin send the text the night when she was found burning alive? Did he send those texts to throw authorities off? I think he may have sent those to throw authorities off because then they would have thought that he was at home while this went on, and so they wouldn't suspect him. And also the fact that he mentioned that he had a girlfriend coming up from Louisiana. He could have very easily had a girlfriend coming up from Louisiana. The authorities think that he added that to, so it'd be difficult to make the connection between Quentin killing Jessica.
Did Jessica's family know that Quentin was going to murder Jessica? Really, in this case, I feel like they couldn't have known for sure that he was going to murder her. Really, it's hard to pinpoint when anybody's gonna murder anyone, especially when they have a psychotic break and murder somebody. They could have had their suspicions or gut feelings about him and that he was a bad guy or a bad influence or that something was going to eventually happen, possibly to Jessica. But I feel like they couldn't have known for sure that he was going to murder her.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if the family knew or not. We never can really know. They probably didn't because that's not something you would expect. And like he had a good relationship with his family and stuff. And generally speaking, Quentin and Jessica were on alright terms according to his family, so they probably did not see it coming. Could Jessica accidentally have set herself on fire? So it is very unlikely that Jessica actually set her car on fire. Anything is possible because she did do drugs, so there's that obviously. The fact that, like, I just don't think that Jessica actually would do something like that.
Now, her car could have had a problem in the electrical system where it caught on fire, but gasoline would not have been involved in that, obviously. Could Jessica have accidentally set her car on fire? Probably not, unless she was having a bad trip on drugs, but it just seems very likely she would do it while she was in the car.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, it is very unlikely, and the fact that gasoline was involved in the whole situation with Quentin, it just seems he seems kind of off, and like their relationship seemed kind of like rough. It can take like a lot to catch stuff on fire.
If Quentin did not kill Jessica, who killed her? If he didn't kill her, it could have been that Eric or Derek she possibly mumbled about. It could have been a random stranger, a serial killer, somebody else that she knew that had a grudge against her, or picked a fight with her and got pissed off and decided to just set her car on fire. It could be anyone that nobody expects, but with all the evidence in this case, and with Quentin's history and everything, a lot of these things do point to Quentin potentially murdering her.
Another theory I found on Reddit, and basically they wondered if an Eric tattoo was the last thing she saw. So somebody with an Eric tattoo. So that could be very well possible that the last thing she saw was a tattoo. She might have not known their name. The closest thing that she would be able to mumble out is Eric because of seeing a tattoo. So that could explain it. However, with Quentin's history and Quentin recently, with him having convicted and also his persistency with asking for sex for her and she asking for money in exchange, makes me think that it was definitely him. Also, the fact that like they live super close to each other. She was found burning alive really close to where she lived, and that often surveillance videos a couple days before caught them together, makes me think that he did it, because why else would he be like hanging around with her if he wasn't that close to her? He kind of downplays their relationship, but the fact that they're consistently seen with each other a lot, constantly texting back and forth, makes me seem they may have a stronger relationship than we think. It could have been another person named Eric or Derek, and there's so many like Eric and Derek's, and the fact that she doesn't have an Eric or Derek in her phone would make it easier for them to get away with murder, because they wouldn't be able to link it up to anyone. So a stranger could do this, but I feel like it had to be Quentin. You're not usually going to find a stranger come up to you and set you on fire unless they're really, really crazy. Usually it's going to be somebody that knows you and doesn't like you. Another person mentioned on Reddit that there are friends of friends by the name of Eric, but none of them have been charged. That could also be possible as well. I did not know that was a thing. So it could have been a friend of Quentin's. He could have done this. Maybe Quentin had him do it. I don't think they would have like done it on their own will, but I think like Quentin somehow was involved. Why have they still not convicted Quentin? So they have tried Quentin twice, which is insane. Like, he definitely, I feel like he should be convicted, with all the evidence is pointing towards him committing this murder. And the main reason why he has not been convicted is because, mentioned multiple times, whenever Jessica was found burned alive, like burning alive in her last moments, the 9 first responders that were there, they kept saying they heard an Eric or a Derek. And because of that, they think that there is a Derek or maybe an Eric out there for her murder, and that Quentin, that name is not similar, even though there's so much evidence towards him. They, for the longest time, kept holding on to that, and so it kept resulting in a hung jury. However, recently they decided that they are going to try him again. Hopefully this time it goes very well, because the fact that we later on find out in 2015 that he was found committing a fraud, stealing supposedly his girlfriend at the time, stealing like her credit card information, and because they convicted him of that, they ended up linking that to him murdering that Taiwanese woman. So I think the fact that now there is another woman that he has been convicted for, it may be a little bit easier to convict him of this crime. Also, because she was burned alive, there's so much evidence that gets destroyed. 90% of her body is destroyed. So it's like, how do you even do an autopsy and see if there is bruises that link to Quentin, or, fingerprints on the car, when literally everything is burned? You cannot get that much evidence from it. It's all based off of witnesses. Yeah, no one was around whenever she was burned alive. Someone called for help later on, but no one was there, so they couldn't see who set her car on fire. And so that is why it is really difficult to convict him for her murder.
Yeah, with all that information, it is very hard to convict him for her murder, and the fact that the jury was hung all because of the details of her potentially saying Eric or Derek.
And I think that this definitely should be a learning lesson for women, that whenever guys are acting suspicious and sending texts asking for sex and you're saying no and they are refusing, you should definitely go to authorities, because if you don't, it could turn out really, really bad. This could have possibly have been prevented had someone known what was happening with Jessica. Had someone had been there with her or for her, I feel like there would have been a higher chance of her actually still being alive. Now, he would have still probably possibly even tried, but I think that it is definitely important for women to come forward if a guy is acting weird around you, that is not okay.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. Remember to always keep your eyes open. You never know when someone's watching.